What's up, everybody? Today I'm out here with my Kayak Voodoo sit on top kayak. I'm gonna show you how to take this seemingly random pile of mess and turn it into a fully functioning, ready to fish kayak. Okay, so the first thing I do when I get a new kayak is start thinking about how I could get the paddle out of my hand so I could focus on fishing. And the easiest way to do that is to install a motor. So for this kayak, it's already got these 5 mounting points on the back from the factory, and you can order a motor mount for it. But a universal motor mount on Amazon is about $100, and I was able to 3D print this one in a few hours at my house, and it only cost me a few dollars worth of filament. The factory mounting hardware for these accessory plates is too short to run this motor mount on, so I just went to the hardware store and bought these bolts, made sure they were the right thread size and pitch. Then I just get them pre-threaded, and I just finish it off with a Ryobi drill. Alright, so now that the motor mount is on, as you can see, it's too far back for me to reach comfortably from the seat. So I need to start thinking about how I'm going to steer it. And for that, just like on my other kayak, I'm going to use this Pelican high drive steering system. Now to connect the steering system, I 3D printed this mounting plate. And I got a couple of these track mount bolts off of Amazon. Now if you don't have a 3D printer, you can get an HDPE cutting board. You could pick them up at the Dollar Tree or at Walmart, and then just mark out where these holes are for the bolts. And then this bolt here at the center of the steering wheel sits down a little bit further. That's why I have this hole right here. So just cut the cutting board out to size and then drill the appropriate holes in it, and then you're good to go. If you're using the system on a track mount like I am, you're going to want to put 2 nuts directly on top of the plate to keep it from sliding back, because keeping tension on the steering cables is what allows you to actually turn. In this plate that I printed, I added these 2 holes in case I were to mount this on a kayak that doesn't have a track mount system already set up. Then once you have the plate mounted where you want it, you just slide the steering assembly over the bolts and then secure it in place. So for this next part, you are going to need to drill a couple holes in your kayak, because we're going to use these cable brackets that came with the steering assembly. They just slide over the cable, and then slide down over the cable track, and then this bracket goes over them, and you secure this in place where you want it to be. To secure those in place, they supplied these threaded anchors. So you just pick the spot where you want to mount the cable, and then drill 1 hole for each of the cables. If you drill your hole, you might notice these things actually have a spot for an Allen key on the top, and you thread them in. And once they're threaded in, you take this bracket, put the Phillips screw through that comes with it, and then tighten it down. As you tighten it down, you're going to want to make sure that the bracket stays straight and secured in place like that. And now the steering system is secure on the front. You're going to do the same thing on the back, but before you do that, you need to know where you're going to mount the end to keep enough tension on the cables. Keep it tight. Take our motor, secure the motor in place. Now after you get the motor secured in place where it's going to sit, you're going to need a way to connect the steering cables to the motor. For that, I 3D printed the steering assembly that is specifically sized to go over the 1-inch motor shaft on the water snake trolling motor. Newport Vessels makes one. Well, the one that they make is designed for a Newport Vessels trolling motor, and as such, it's a little bit bigger. And you can get away with using it by wrapping the motor shaft in tape where you're going to put the steering assembly. But I didn't want to deal with that, so I made this one specifically for this motor. It just clips on like that. Then add the bolts, or add the nuts, and then tighten it down. Before you tighten it down all the way, it's a good idea to make sure that you line it up straight. That way it steers accurately. After you have the motor mount, or the motor mounted, and the steering assembly, or the steering arms attached, gonna come in here and clip these carabiners onto the steering arm. And then figure out where you want, or where you're going to secure the cables to keep tension on the steering arm. To find out where you want to have them positioned, make sure your handle is lined up straight, and then get tension on the cables and find a place to secure the outside of the wire. So for this particular kayak, and for most of them that aren't Pelican made, the motor, or the steering arm, sits too high for you to secure the ends of the cable sheath. So I'm going to use these flat tip screws, or the flat top screws. Without turning the motor, going to get tension on both sides, making sure to keep the steering arm straight. Mark out where, or kind of hold the cable in place where I'm going to secure it. I'm going to take a screw, put it on one side of the cable, and then screw it in. So making sure that the cable is still where it's supposed to be, I'm going to take another screw, put it directly on the other side, and screw it in. Then you go to the other side and do the same thing with the other cable. Now if you have it connected right, when you steer, the motor should steer. If you notice I have the wires crossed back there, that's because if I want to steer to the left, the front of the motor needs to go to the right, and that will push the back of the kayak out so it steers the direction I want it to. Just something to keep in mind when you're setting this up. If you look back here, you'll see the reason why I wanted to run the cables through the inside of the kayak, because they're just kind of here now. I could sort of run them up like that, and then the crate will sit on top of them and stop them from really getting in the way of anything. And that brings us to the next part of the kayak, which is the crate. This is just a generic milk crate that I bought down at the store. You could buy them. You could actually buy kits like this that comes with a crate, 2 rod holders, and a waterproof bag that sits inside it. It's made by YakGear, and you could order that on Amazon. I think it's like $55 or $60. I'll put a link to it down below. But this crate is big enough with the 2 rod holders on it. It holds both rods that I'm bringing out. I don't like to have more than 2 rods with me at a time on the kayak because it just kind of gets in the way. But it'll also hold the battery and a couple of tackle trays that I put in there. The battery is still the 50 amp hour 12 volt lithium battery from Ampertime. I got that on Amazon. I think they're $250. I will include a link to that and everything else that I'm using down below. But the next thing is we need to be able to control the kayak, or we need to be able to power the motor. And for that, I ordered a pulse width modulator, and then I printed this box for it and have it hooked up inside. It has a forward and reverse switch as well as off, and it has a dial. So like you can see here on the motor, there's just high, low, forward, and back. This thing allows you to control any speed in between. You just set the motor on high and forward, and then this will control everything from there. If you want to know how this works, there's a whole video, or there's multiple videos on YouTube explaining how the PWM works. But to connect that to the kayak, I just have this YakGear rail mount piece that just slides in there, and then tighten it down. It lets you slide it forward and back to get it in a comfortable position. And on the bottom of the box, I've built a mount that just snaps in like that. And now that is elevated, so if water comes over, it won't touch the PWM and break it. And then I run the cables under the seat and into the crate so they're out of my way. Got my negative and my positive cable. So I connect the positive and negative wire from the PWM to the battery. Then I take the power clamps from the motor and connect them onto the terminals here on the battery, or here on the PWM. And this side is negative, you can see by the super official black tape. And with that, I flip this switch and then turn this dial, and you can see that the motor starts going. If I turn the dial, it turns off. Flip the switch into reverse, and it starts going the other way with different speeds as I adjust the dial. So that's pretty much it for the motor control. And as it sits, you can take this kayak out, motor around, you're good to go. But I like to know how deep the water is, how much battery life I have left, and what temperature the water is. So to do that, or to know all that, I have a Garmin Striker 4, and now I'm going to show you how this mounts onto the kayak. So I actually took this off of my other kayak. This is the Scotty Transducer mount, and just like everything else on the kayak, this is a track mount. So it just sits in the tracks like that. Then you tighten it down, and now you have the arm that drops down into the water. It sticks out a little bit, and then down here you can adjust this piece in order to adjust the side-to-side tilt of this if your kayak doesn't have a straight down side. And then I wrap the transducer cable around the arm, and then just set the bundle right there because that transducer cable is way too long. To mount the actual main unit for the fish finder, I 3D printed this plate. It has a bunch of different holes in it for a different fish finder mounting style. And then again, I put a YakGear mounting point on here. YakGear accessory mount. Then you take the mounting base for your fish finder, find what holes line up with the screws. I think it's these ones. Yeah. So once you have your fish finder mount secured to the mounting thing, you pop that in there, slide this on, and then fish finder clips on there, and then you just connect that how you normally would. And once again, I like to run the cable under the seat to keep it out of the way, in through the crate, and then connect it to the battery as normal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's a quick way to have a fairly capable fishing kayak. Everything I put on this kayak can be easily adapted to fit on any kayak. When I was trying to figure out how to make this system, I wanted to keep it as universal as possible. The only thing that's specific to this kayak is this mounting, or the motor mount. But again, the bolt pattern for that mount, any kayak that has a mini power pole mounting point should be able to use that motor mount. It's the same bolt pattern, or same bolt spacing and everything. So if you're trying to do this on a kayak like the Ascend FS10, you'll have to use a different type of motor mount. You could look at one of my other videos for the universal one that I made out of a 2x4 and a milk crate, or you could look at the most recent FS10 video I did that shows the motor mount I 3D printed for that. The crate will fit on just about any kayak that's designed for fishing. The steering assembly can fit, that could mount on any kayak. It is designed for a Pelican, so if you have a Pelican kayak, it might already have the mounting point for it. And the fish finder mount, again, if you have a track mount, you could put that on there. I know most of the accessories I have for my kayak are made to work with YakGear. That's just because they have an 8-point mounting system, like for their brackets and everything. So it's easy to it was easy to get the measurements for that and start designing things to 3D print to make it work. But whatever company you prefer for accessories, they'll pretty much work the same. Everything on this kayak, I will make a link to a commercially available product for it. So if you don't have a 3D printer, you can either easily make a product like this. You could easily make that out of a cutting board, or you can order the products if you don't have a 3D printer. One last thing that I'm going to add on this kayak before the video ends, I'm going to add this YakGear accessory plate. I ordered a pair of stabilizer arms, and the biggest complaint that I saw in the comments was the mounting bracket for the kayak actually breaks. So I came up with this design and then 3D printed it. The shape of it should make it a lot stronger, significantly more difficult to break off. And it just mounts right here where the factory installed mounting plates are. Again, had to get longer bolts for it. But having this mounting bracket right here, it's deep enough to where any of the YakGear factory accessories can fit in there, like the stabilizer arm, or what I mostly use it for is a 360 cam I put on the stabilizer arm and have that off the side of the kayak so I don't miss anything while I'm out there fishing. So you just get this, and then tighten these down. And YakGear makes they make a flag that's really important to have if you're out fishing on the bay or out in the ocean. That way the bigger boats can see you. The bright orange flag has a light on the top of it, and it uses the same type of mount. So I put one of these on the other side and have the flag sticking up. That way as the sun's going down, I could put the light on. They'll be able to see me, and during the day the flag will be out so they could see that. Yeah, so that's the accessories plate, motor mount, steering assembly, crate. Pretty much it. To secure the crate, I do run a small, not a ratchet strap, but a cinch strap that you tighten just by pulling the strap through the bracket, and I run it through these two scupper holes right here, and that keeps the crate secure so it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If you guys liked the video, if you want to see anything else done, maybe have suggestions for how I could do something better, just let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video where I take this out and test it.